Good morning, everyone, and welcome. This is meeting number 82 of the Standing Committee on Public Accounts, Thursday, November 30th, 2017. I remind everyone today that we are again televised. For those in the audience, as well as the media and staff and members, make sure that your phone is on vibrate or mute or off. That lessens the disruptions that we have, so I appreciate that. We also will try to leave time this afternoon or this morning for committee business. There may be 15 or 20 minutes at the end where we want to discuss one matter of business, and that will be at the end of the scheduled time today. Today we are studying Report 2, Call Centres, Canada Revenue Agency from the Fall 2017 Reports of the Auditor General of Canada. As our witness we have today from the Office of the Auditor General, we have Mr. Michael Ferguson, Canada's Auditor General. We also have Martin Dompierre, Principal, attending with him. From the Canada Revenue Agency, we have Bob Hamilton, Mr. Bob Hamilton, Commissioner of Revenue and Chief Executive Officers, Mr. Frank Vermaten, Assistant Commissioner, Assessment, Benefits and Service Branch, and we have Ms. Gillian Pronk, Director General, Call Centre Services Directorate, Assessments, Benefits and Service Branch. I thank you all for coming. I understand that we have opening statements from our witnesses, and I would invite our Auditor General to begin.
Thank you. Monsieur le Président, je vous remercie.
Mr. Chair, thank you for this opportunity to discuss our Fall 2017 report on Canada Revenue Agency's call centres. Joining me at the table is Martin Dompierre, the principal who is responsible for the audit. Every year, taxpayers have questions about their taxes. The agency's telephone call centres are an important way for members of the public to obtain tax information, especially for those who do not have internet access, those who are uncomfortable using computers, and those who cannot find answers on the agency's website. Our audit looked at whether the Canada Revenue Agency's call centres provided Canadians with timely access to accurate information. We focused on calls received on 3 of the centre's telephone lines, one for individuals, one for businesses, and one about benefit payments. We also examined the agency's methods to assess and report on its call centre's performance. Overall, we found that the agency did not provide timely access to accurate information.
9 million calls, which was more than half of the calls it received. The agency monitored how long callers waited to speak with an agent. When the average wait time approached 2 minutes, the agency either blocked calls, usually by giving them a busy signal, or directed them to the automated self-service system. The agency told us that callers would prefer a busy signal or an automated message to waiting more than 2 minutes to speak with an agent. However, the agency had not surveyed callers to verify this assumption. As a result, callers had to make an average of 3 or 4 call attempts in a week, and even after several attempts, some callers still didn't reach an agent. Through our tests, we found that the rate of agent errors was significantly higher than what the agency estimated. Call center agents gave us inaccurate information almost 30% of the time. This is similar to the test results of other assessors and significantly higher than the error rate estimated by the Canada Revenue Agency. We found that the agency's quality control system didn't test the accuracy of agents' responses effectively or independently, so the results of its tests were unreliable. For example, in most cases, agents knew that their calls were being monitored, which may have encouraged them to change their behaviors to improve their performance. Finally, the agency reported that about 90% of callers were able to reach either the self-service system or call center agent. However, we found that percentage didn't account for the calls it blocked, which were more than half its total call volume. Seulement 36%.
Only 36% of all calls made to the agency's call centers reached either an agent or the self-service system and lasted 1 minute or more. Furthermore, by blocking calls or redirecting them to the self-service system, the agency was able to report that it achieved its 2-minute service standard for agent wait times. We are pleased to report that the CRA has agreed with all of our recommendations and has committed to taking corrective action.
Statement. We would be pleased to answer any questions the committee may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ferguson, and we'll now move to Mr. Hamilton, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity to appear before the committee today. And as you mentioned, I am accompanied by Frank Vermatten and Gillian Pranke from the agency, who have responsibilities in overseeing the CRA's call centers. In my first year as Commissioner, I can attest to the commitment of CRA's employees to improve services to Canadians, combat tax evasion and aggressive tax avoidance, and provide a fair and equitable administration of Canada's tax and benefits system.
I'm here today to speak to you about the Auditor General's Fall 2017 report concerning the CRA's call centers. Mr. Chair, the Auditor General recommended that the CRA take action in 3 areas to address service standards offered by its call centers: improving accessibility, strengthening the quality and accuracy of its responses, and enhancing program measurements and reports.
Recommendations. We need to do better. Service to Canadians is at the heart of the agency's mission and is a fundamental component of the Minister's mandate as articulated by the Prime Minister. As requested, Mr. Chair, a copy of our action plan was provided to the committee members in advance for their review and consideration. The action plan identifies how the CRA will implement the Auditor General's recommendations and outlines its approach to support staff development, introduce new technology, and improve its operating systems and processes. Let me assure you, Mr. Chair, the staff who work at our call centers across the country, together with their colleagues responsible for information technology and reporting, are committed to implementing this plan. They have demonstrated integrity and innovation in their work to find solutions to improve the services they offer to Canadians, and I'm proud of the work that our employees carry out every day. An important element of the action plan is to provide additional training and improved tools to these call center agents to ensure they have the information and tools they need to deliver the services upon which Canadians rely. These improvements will include the introduction of tools to better assess agent readiness and proficiency. The agency is also in the process of adopting a new and more modern call center technology platform that will allow us to improve the services we provide to Canadians. The action plan also identifies how the agency will update its service standards and reporting for call centers. We are committed to being more transparent with Canadians to ensure they know the level of service they can expect from the CRA and how we are performing against those expectations.
In advance of introducing this new technology, the agency has already taken a number of steps to improve and modernize its call center service during the past year.
Agents, and we have improved our existing systems and processes to enhance Canadians' access to our call centers. We have extended wait times from 2 to 5 minutes to reduce the chance of getting a busy signal, in line with one of the Auditor General's recommendations. We have expanded the options available to callers through our interactive voice response system, which provides callers with self-serve options if they cannot access an agent immediately. And through these self-serve options, we have reduced the demand on our call center agents so they can dedicate the time required to assist callers with more complex questions. Grâce à ces changements, les Canadiens obtiennent.
As a result of these changes, Canadians have higher success rates when they attempt to access the call center telephone lines.
In funding, we have reduced the chance a caller might get a busy signal when calling the income tax inquiries line by 50%. On average, Canadians will call the CRA approximately twice to speak with an agent, as opposed to 4 times at the time of the Auditor General's report. We are now responding to approximately 50% of the calls. While we know that there is still room for improvement, and we will improve, this represents some progress that has been met with increased client satisfaction, as indicated by our caller surveys. As we develop increasingly sophisticated methods to provide better services, Canadians can count on the CRA to deliver its programs in a fair and trusted manner. Last year, the Auditor General reported on the agency's appeals process and noted areas for improvement. We created an action plan to address these issues. I came before this committee to discuss that plan. I'm pleased to report that we are following through on these commitments and have made progress. Rest assured, Mr. Chair, the CRA will implement the action plan on call centres with the same commitment and determination. I welcome any questions that the committee may have about our responses to the Auditor General's recommendations or about our action plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much for all who have given their opening remarks, and I just want to say that into every member of Parliament's office, we receive calls, obviously, from people that are frustrated with CRA. Many times seniors who don't understand the wait times and perhaps don't understand why information hasn't been given or false information. So. You know, it's good that you're here, that you've recognized some of this. It's been less, there hasn't so much been an apology today, but you have recognized where we've been deficient and where we need to do better. We're going to go into the first round of questioning, and we'll go to Monsieur Lefebvre for 7 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And on that, and on your comments, we get in our offices, most of the calls that we have are, I'd say almost 50% are with respect to people having a hard time reaching CRA. So when this report came out, I don't think any of the MPs were unfortunately surprised by the challenges of reaching CRA. What has come to light, though, is why that was the case and where we are now. So the one major challenge that I have is that when did responding or answering only 30% of the calls become an acceptable practice? When did that happen? Because I recall, I did a practice tax law, so we could actually get to the desk at an office, at a CRA office. We can go see somebody there and actually talk to somebody there. We could actually make phone calls and get quicker responses. And that was almost 20 years ago, 15, 20 years ago. And now I'm seeing these, like, it's as if there's a wall. There's a wall that you can't talk to us. I'm saying, when did that culture start to happen, and where? Because it's extremely concerning now that, and having an acceptable practice of 30% is basically the norm for us.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to respond to that, and I'll just back up a little bit because I think it's important to understand how this transpires. And we would like more people to get through. I don't deny that. But we have a technology that doesn't allow us to do a number of things, including give people predicted wait times. And we have a service standard, which we have adopted, which said if you get through to an agent, if you get through our lines, we will connect you with an agent within 2 minutes, 80% of the time. And so when we have excess demand in the system, in order to meet that commitment, we then have to give some people busy signals in order to fulfill that commitment. Now, that is a trade-off that one makes when you're designing the system. Other countries might take a different approach and say, you'll just sit on the line as long as it takes, and if it takes half an hour, so be it. But this is a decision that was taken in the early 2000s that we would adopt this service standard, and that means in order to fulfill that, that we need to control how many people get in, and that results in busy signals. So it's not that it's an acceptable practice to deny those people. That is just the way we run the system, and we do look forward to the new technology that comes in that will allow us some more flexibility to operate a call center.
Well, that's what I want to talk about.
More like our colleagues.
Thank you. Is the new technology and what? How old is the technology that is being used right now?
I believe it's 20 years old, but it's I may be wrong on that, and Frank can correct me, but it's definitely old and outdated.
I would agree if it's 20 years old, and we're talking about a telephone system here. I'm sure it's pretty old. But what will this new system do to ensure that the response rate goes from? I know now you're aiming from going from 2 minutes to people can wait 5 minutes. Is that one of the goals that you're looking at?
Yeah, one of the things that we have tried, so we had this 2-minute standard, and as I said, it's a choice you can make between how many people you let in and how long people wait. So we experimented earlier this year with what if we let more people through, but then the people who were there had to wait a bit longer. And we tried it out, and we thought, well, it worked reasonably well. We get some positive response. So we're continuing with that to have a little bit longer lead time that would allow more people to get in. And so as a result, we're seeing fewer busy signals than before. It's not to say that it's perfect, but we tried that out. So we will continue with that. We're trying to take action now in advance of the new technology, which we will have next year. But we can't just wait till next year and not try to make progress. So we are trying to make progress at the moment. And then when the new technology arrives, we won't have to do so much manual routing of where the calls go. We'll have much more flexibility in the system to help us manage the calls and give people a sense that we can tell them your wait time will be X minutes and you can choose to wait or call back.
Thank you. Now, how are you measuring that right now? Obviously, you're saying it's improved. Things are getting better. What measures are you using to? What are you doing to measure all this? Like who's measuring it and how?
We have a post-call survey that we're implementing to ask certain people at times, how was it? What do you think? And how did you enjoy the experience, if I can put it that way? And we're getting, reasonably good feedback on the longer wait time. People don't like longer wait times, but they're happy to have.
Will the new technology
to be able to get through more quickly?
Okay, sorry. Will the new technology allow you to get better data? Because that data of human experience is, I'm not sure it's always how you actually interpret the data that you're actually getting when you talk about a human. So will this new technology allow you to better track the way that you're responding to people that are asking questions?
Yes, it will allow us to better track what's happening, and also more importantly, better control how we route the calls. Will we be able to get them to free agents more efficiently? Will we be able to direct them to people with the right skill set? Because we have different tiers of people who answer calls. Some can answer simple calls, some can be more sophisticated. So we'll be able to route them better. And frankly, the new technology will allow us to record calls and will allow us to do better monitoring of how the call went. And so it comes to another issue that the Auditor General has raised on accuracy. How will we be able to identify when an accurate response was given or when we needed to correct something, and then we can better train our employees to respond more accurately to the calls.
Perfect.
I'm sorry, we missed that last sentence. I think your mic had flipped off on the last sentence.
I was just saying that how the new technology will help us not only direct calls more efficiently to where they need to go, but also to monitor the calls and detect where we might need to improve the training for our agents to ensure that we give accurate responses.
Very quickly, Mr. Chair, you're talking about you're transferring to new technology. We've seen at this committee at many occasions challenges, major challenges with respect to any government agency changing to new technology. Are you doing this? I know you have 9 call centers. Are you doing it all in one shot? You're changing all the technology at once, or are you going to be testing it out center by center before you roll it out? Thank you.
We will definitely be doing testing, extreme testing before we implement this, and it will be phased in different places. The business inquiries, for example, will come out ahead of the individual inquiries. But I should just say, in terms of the technology, while it will be a big step forward for us, it is not a new cutting-edge technology. It's a technology that has been used in call centers. So we are quite confident that when we roll it out, it will work, but we are going to be very, very careful to make sure we test it properly.
Thank you very much. We'll now move to the other side and to Mr. Nuttall, please, the opposition side, for 7 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Sorensen. Thank you to the Auditor General and team and members of CRA for joining us this morning. Before I'd like to ask some questions to CRA. I'd like to ask the Auditor General's office, perhaps, if they have this information today. When we're talking about accuracy and the questions that were asked, if you were to take out the I don't know or refer to a senior agent, do we know what that percentage was on each question at this point?
Yeah, so the numbers of referrals we did is 21, but the number of referrals we were told during the survey, it was 21, and then the accuracy rate would be 36%, and in that case, if you would exclude these 21 referrals to the second level, the tier 2 level for during the call.
Okay.
If you redo the calculation, I believe the accuracy rate would be 36%.
Mr. Nuttall.
So, Mr. Hamilton, you started going into the accuracy side, and just to preface this, no matter how bad audit results are, there is always going to be somewhat of an awkward feeling when this is done publicly and not privately. But this is brutal. This report is atrocious. I can tell you that in any of my jobs and any of my staff, if 84% of the time there was an incorrect response rate, and let's just pretend that the 84% included I don't know, even though it's the other way around, we wouldn't be around for long. I can tell you in 2 years, the people of Barrie, Springwater, or Medonte would make sure I'm not around if 84% of the time on any single question we couldn't get it right. And I know that that's the outlier, that's the extremity of the audit results, but none of them, quite frankly, instill confidence in what CRA does. I'm wondering how, based on these audit results, what are your results today on this question? Do you take the questions that were asked by the Auditor General and then try to measure going forward based on the exact same questions so that you can have an apples to apples measuring process?
Yeah, just before that question gets answered, Mr. Dompier just wants to clarify the number again. Sorry.
Sorry, the number, I made a sort of mistake. So when you look at the report in Exhibit 2.4, we say that the overall inaccuracy was 29%. So if you exclude the 21 cases where they were referred, and we said, thank you, that was considered to be a right answer, then your inaccuracy rate would be 36%. Inaccuracy. Sorry, I said accuracy, but inaccuracy would be at 36% instead of 29. Sorry about that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So, Mr. Chair, just to respond to that, obviously we look at the accuracy results and we know that we need to do a better job of training our agents to respond to the questions and make sure that we are getting the questions to the right people who have the right skill set to respond. I would say in the first instance, one of the most important things will be the new technology that we will be adopting next year that will allow us a more sophisticated way to monitor what's happening on the calls. Right now, we do side-by-side listening, and this is in the Auditor General's report. And we have various ways within this technology to try to check on the calls, but they're not perfect. The Auditor General referenced that when we're sitting side by side with someone, that could influence how they react on the call. In the new system, we will have an ability to record and monitor more independently. And so I think that's going to give us a better sense of where there might be problem areas and where we need to correct it. But we're not waiting for the technology. Right? We're taking some action now. We have looked at our training system. We have tried to improve. We give all of our agents 6 weeks of training before they start, and they all get refresher courses each year to reflect any new changes that have happened. And we're looking at that, trying to make sure that we're giving them the best tools and the best training that we can at the moment, giving them reference tools that are easier for them to access.
Mr. Hamilton, I only have so much time.
And we're making right now in advance of the technology.
Thank you. I think, look, when will my interest start being charged is a very simple question that needs to be able to be answered by every single CRA agent. And the fact that about 1 in 10 or 2 in 10 either basically just gave the wrong answer. You know, within that 80% that gave the wrong answer, the 20% may have said, I don't know. These are very simple questions. I don't understand how we get here. And I also don't understand how it is that we wait for these types of situations to occur, these audits to come in, before the technology transition comes into place. Why does it take the most negative results from your department in order for us to start looking at these types of changes, whether it's on the training side, or it's on the measurement side, or it's on the actual process side? I don't understand why, and you said you were only be in for a year, so maybe this isn't just your position, but you represent the department on everything to do with this audit at this point, and I don't understand how it takes so long and why it takes such drastic circumstances to get here. There has to be a change going forward, that the department's going to be proactive on ensuring that the measurement of these results is accurate, that it is completing and working on the same work that the Auditor General has done. So when we come back in a year, we can take a snapshot and say that 84 is 24, and it's still high, but it's going in the right direction. So will you be able to do that for us in a year from now?
Very quickly, please.
Yes, without, I should just say, first off, we don't sit around and wait for an Auditor General's report to try to monitor what's happening, how's it going, what's going on out there with access or quality. We do have tests to see how the agents are doing. As I've said, they may not be as effective as they need to be, and they will be under the new technology. We did notice in 2015 that we had quite a restricted access to the phone lines. We put more money in, $50 million over 4 years, to try to hire more agents to improve accessibility. So we are, within the technology that we have, we are constantly trying to improve. And I can assure you that going forward, we will be transparent about what's happening on both certainly on the accessibility side. On the accuracy side, we will be doing our work for sure, to make sure that our agents are giving as accurate responses as possible.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hamilton. We'll now move to Mr. Christofferson, please. Mr. Christofferson, you have 7 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you all for attending today. Mr. Hamilton, are you familiar with the Taxpayer Bill of Rights?
I am.
Is it important?
It's very important.
Very important. Number 6 says you have the right to complete, accurate, clear, and timely information. Did you meet that right?
We certainly strive to meet that.
Pardon me? Pardon me?
We certainly strive to meet that.
But you failed, is what I'd like to hear you say, rather than tell me that you tried. Let's just be clear here, sir. The focus of this audit was, referring to 2.4 from the Auditor General report, this audit focused on whether the Canada Revenue Agency's call centres provided Canadian taxpayers with timely access to accurate information, which I remind you is number 6 in the Bill of Rights. Conclusion on page 17. We concluded that the Canada Revenue Agency's call centers did not provide taxpayers with timely access to call center agents. So why do you tell me you're striving? You failed. I'd like to hear you say that.
Well, I think that we agree with the Auditor General's recommendations that we need to improve, and we will. And I think my focus right now is in putting together a good action plan that will dictate how we can improve both on access to the phones, quality of information we provide, and our reporting to the public. And that's my commitment today. And there will probably constantly be room for improvement, but we are undertaking a very serious exercise to make sure that we can improve, a part of which is investing in new technology. I got to tell you, that sounds more like a sales job than an answer. This is not going well. I don't know who told you this was the approach to take, but with an audit like this, first thing you ought to be doing, sir, is acknowledging the abysmal results of the department that you're responsible for. I want to go back to the Auditor General's opening comments when he presented the overall report, and this is one of the chapters. And the Auditor General said this just last week. I was hoping that I would be able to talk about something other than results for citizens. I keep delivering the same message that the government doesn't understand its results from the citizen's perspective. Then we go to page 16 of the Auditor General's report, 2.78. In the middle of that paragraph, if the agency had reported on access to its call centers from a taxpayer's perspective. So I want to hear what part of taxpayer's perspective you're not getting, because all you're doing is telling me all the measurements you're doing within and how everything's going to be fine, and the starting point is the Auditor General saying that this government is overall is not getting the message that services start with the citizen. And this report clearly says your department, your agency didn't do that. So talk to me about the Auditor General's comments that the government is failing in this regard, and the fact that he used those actual words from the taxpayer's perspective in this audit, this terrible audit of your agency. Mr. Chair, what I would say is that certainly we believe that we have to look at things from the citizen's perspective. And let me use 2 examples. Last year, I came and talked about our appeals function, and one of the criticisms was that we weren't reporting on the time it took from a citizen's perspective. We were counting it from the appeals branch perspective. We took that criticism, we changed, and we now report on the time something comes in until it goes. And I guess what I'm telling you today is we will be changing in this regard. And we will be looking to be very transparent in reporting on all aspects. Not only will we try to get the people that come through the queue answered in a reasonable time, whether it's 2 minutes to 5 minutes, but we will also be transparent about the amount of busy signals, unanswered calls. Indeed, in the departmental results report this year, we did report on that more transparently. So we are improving, and we will continue to improve, and we will be taking the approach of our actions and our reporting being viewed from the client and the customer, the taxpayer's perspective.
All right. That's a good start. But I also would, just on that departmental report, the fact that you had what amounts to misleading information to citizens is a huge problem. I'm going to come back to that in a second. But I want to focus for a moment on this National Quality and Accuracy Learning Program. The Auditor General went in and said on page 8, 2.39, our test results found that the agents gave wrong information to callers almost 30% of the time. We also found that other assessors had encountered similar error rates over the past years. When we go over to the chart that's provided, Exhibit 2.4 on page 9, it shows that your agency, in this National Quality and Accuracy Learning Program, were admitting to a 6% error rate, and the Auditor General is saying it's closer to 30%. Now, in your action plan, I didn't see a major overhaul of this testing agency, and there's lots of analysis here. But I mean, what gives? And what's with this agency that's supposed to provide accurate information, and nobody can rely on the work they're doing? And what are you going to do about that? Because I didn't see anything about an overhaul of that agency. Like, this really troubled me when I saw that you had this quality assurance folks go in there, and they came back and gave Canadians this assurance, and it was wrong. And it took the Auditor General to come back in and say, that information's not correct. That is not the service they're providing. It's actually this. So what's up with that?
So let me respond to part of that, and I'll ask my colleague to respond in more detail about the training. But what I can say on the quality assurance, I think you will see in our action plan, or what we intended to have in the action plan, was two main thrusts of what we're going to change. First, we're going to overhaul our training, and we're going to provide better training and better tools for our agents. And we are starting some of that now, but we will be able to do a better job of that with the new technology. So we're going to improve training, give the agents better tools, and we will be able, in the new technology, to direct questions more appropriately to people with the right skill set. So that's one area that we are going to do. The second is that the new technology, and we will have to wait for that, we will be able to do a better job of monitoring the calls and to be able to respond with what might be problem areas, to correct them through training and through education of the agents. So those would be the two main thrusts, but maybe I'll just ask Frank if he wants to comment on the past experiences.
Very quickly,
training.
please. Very quickly.
Sure. I'll say that the fact that we have side-by-side listening rather than call recording is a major issue. It puts us in a situation where we don't have an accurate reading all the time of the error rates, exactly as the auditor pointed out. As a matter of fact, we did an internal audit ourselves and found that we had error rates in line with what the auditor said. So we've developed an action plan that's with respect to training, and we have a new training process called gating and nesting. Happy to explain if we have enough time for that. And then, the big change will be the technology that allows the call recording. So in headquarters, we will be able to monitor people in the field and determine their accuracy rates. And when there's systematic errors that are being done, we'll be able to fix that with new information. The other part of the technology, which will be very important, is skills-based routing. That means that when a caller calls, they're going to be hooked up with the right agent at the right tier level much more quickly, and you're more likely to get a right answer. So I think there's quite a lot that's going to happen over the course of the next year to improve our accuracy. We'll be able to measure our accuracy much better, and we're going to be able to respond through the better training and through that call recording and skill-based
Thank
writing.
you very much. We'll now move to Mr. Area, please. Mr. Area.
Chair, let me understand. Auditor General report says inaccuracy response rate is 36%. The number quoted, your internal number quoted in the report says 6%. Now we are saying that your internal audit found the inaccuracy response rate is in line with the Auditor General. Is my understanding correct?
Our internal audit showed that we had an error rate of 20%, but it is a considerably different.
That internal audit report come?
I should call it, it's an internal evaluation. It was probably about a year and a half ago.
Year and a half ago. Since then, what things you have done to make sure that these numbers are not as big as it should be?
So we've put in place a new training process. It's just being rolled out now. We've got it in one center. It's called our gating and nesting.
I don't understand one thing, that CRA has been around for very, very long time. The taxpayers are finding this difficult. We know that on daily basis. In fact, in CBC there was a report of Marcia Peel. She has been fighting CRA for 3.5 years to show that she is a single mom And she said she spent hours on the phone trying to get answers from CRA. And I don't know whether your agent on the phone told her that an official separation agreement is sufficient, and she got it, but then after a month CRA told her, no, it's not going to work. How is that? What is the options available to taxpayers who have been given this inaccurate response?
First off, just one thing, we aren't able to talk about specific taxpayer circumstances, so just to clarify
I'm not
that.
asking for that particular
But in
person.
general?
I'm talking about the 36% of the time the agents gave inaccurate response. Based on that response, the taxpayer took some action, and later, maybe 1 month later, maybe 1 year later, maybe 5 years later, CR tells them, no, that is not what you're supposed to do. For example, the agent may tell me, oh, you don't need to keep the documents forever. You can destroy them. I go destroy it. After 5 years, CRA audits me and tells me, no, you should have kept the documents. What options as the taxpayer has in this?
Yes, and again, just not commenting on a specific case, but in general.
As I very clearly said, I am not going for
but
that.
I'm going to answer your question.
Yeah.
No, Mr. Chair, I'm going to answer the question. I just want to make that absolutely clear that I'm not referring to a specific case. We do have provisions where if you get incorrect information from CRA, we have the ability to waive interest and penalties. And so those options are available in a general way, so that can happen. And I'm not saying it's happened in this case, but that option is available. But we do strive to make sure that we give the proper
he
information.
said, she said, no, that is not right. And how can the taxpayer prove? You as CRA, you are a big machine. You have the authority, you have the law behind you. But as a taxpayer, as an individual, the taxpayer doesn't have that kind of strength.
All I can say is that we do have the ability to do that, and taxpayers can raise those issues with us.
And in your response, you're proud of the work that our employees carry out every single day. Who are those managers who gave you the internal report stating that 90% of the callers were able to reach out? That is totally inaccurate report. Are you still proud of those managers who are responsible for that?
I'm actually very proud of the people that work at the CRA, and I've spent over my first year visiting most of the call centers, if not all. And I've sat beside some of the people answering the phones, and I've sat in the rooms where they're trying to direct the calls through the system that we have.
Most of the employees are good, but what about the managers who actually implemented, who gave the wrong, who managed the wrong system of reporting?
But so I just want to say I am actually very proud of the people that work on our systems, and I think they're doing the best job they can with the technology they have, and they've actually shown some innovation and lots of integrity here. We're going to give them the tools that they want, and on the reporting side, we have focused our reporting in the past on meeting the 80% within 2 minutes. We are now broadening that out to, I think, provide a more comprehensive view of what's going on. And as I said earlier,
80% in 2 minutes?
I'm sorry?
I'm sorry, you said 80% in 2 minutes?
Yes. So
once again, that does include the blocked calls?
Right, and so that's what we have focused on, the 80% within 2 minutes. We are now going to provide more comprehensive reporting. We started it in the departmental results report to report on the more complete picture of that. Yes, there is that. If you get through, it's within 2 minutes, but we know that there are people that are not getting through, and we want to report on that, and we want to make progress on all of those fronts. And for example, that's one of the reasons why we experimented with increasing the wait time to see if we could change, because it is a choice that has to be made of how many people can come through and how quickly they can be served until we get the new technology which will allow us to provide wait times to people and they can choose if they'd like to wait.
The underlying thing I've been hearing is, this morning is that technology. CRA has been around for very, very long time. You had decades to improve the technology. I don't think resources were a constraint. Were it?
I'm sorry, you don't think the technology was a constraint?
Were the resources a constraint for you any time to improve the technology and deliver better service to taxpayers?
Well, I think that in that regard, we always do the best we can with the resources that we have. We don't have finite resources, and so we always have to make choices about what we do. And I'm telling you now that we are going to be investing in this technology, but I don't want to give you the sense that it's just technology. That will be a big help to us, but we are taking steps before then, and we need to look at our systems, we need to look at our training. All of those things will be ongoing pressures. And the other thing that I haven't mentioned, which is interesting to note, service is a more comprehensive vehicle than just call centers. And we have to think about the information that we provide in general in the service area. How's our website? And can people go there and get the information that they want to the point where they don't need to call as often? And so we're looking at all of the aspects of how we provide information to Canadians. But today we're talking about the call centers. Technology will be a big change for us. But we also are looking, as I said, at our trainings, at our systems, and making sure that we're giving our people all the tools they need.
Thank you very much. We'll now move to Monsieur Deltel. Monsieur Deltel, vous avez 7 minutes.
You have 7 minutes. Speaking of technology, here you go. Mr. Chair, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Mr. Hamilton, this mustn't be an easy day for you, so thank you for being here today. But it's really difficult, and it will also be difficult for another hour for you. Mr. Hamilton, are you surprised by the results of the AG's audit? I'm not very surprised by the results. We knew that there were issues with access, and we made the choice to have a waiting time of less than 2 minutes. But we had to have a busy signal sometimes. But the results, with regard to the accuracy of the results, was something we had to improve, obviously. And the fact that it was perhaps less transparent, the report, than necessary. These are things, obviously, we have to improve. Mr. Hamilton, your department failed 84% of the time. You failed. And you say you're not surprised, but what did you do? Not be surprised. How come you find this not surprising that 84% of the time your department is not working properly? And this is unacceptable. I won't comment on the 84%, but in general, we do have to improve our training of agents, and we have to make sure that the answers they provide to taxpayers are exact, are accurate. And we also have to improve. Mr. Hamilton, it's a continuing challenge for us. Everyone can improve, we understand that. But with 84% of the time, when things aren't working right, it's obviously you're not up to snuff. So we obviously have to overhaul everything if 84% of the time. If someone fails 84% of the time on a test, would you hire them? Perhaps I would improve the training for that person. It's not a question of a survey or one survey. It's a systematic issue for the agency. And for me, it's important we improve our technology, training, and we really have to understand the sources of these challenges and to rectify the situation. Mr. Hamilton, you have to understand what you've just said is an insult for the 84% of the people who call and they do not get the service that they have the right to receive and that they're paying for. And that is why we have an action plan to improve the situation. What I find very disappointing, Mr. Hamilton, in your answer, is that you're talking about a general improvement, but 84% of the time, it's not just a question of improvement. You really have to overhaul everything and change the culture. How come with this 84% fail rate, you still have your job? Once again, it's a question of surveys with this 84%. As I said, we have to improve the situation. In general, it's important for us to give the right information to Canadians. And we are going to take actions to improve with technology and training. And we really want to be able to understand the problem. We want to have the capacity to hear what callers have to say and to really understand the sources of the problems and to rectify them. That's my commitment in that context. So that's my answer. That's your answer, but this is unacceptable for Canadians because it's more than just one survey that was done. This shows that things aren't working at all. And that unfortunately when you say that it's technology that has to be improved, that's not true. The technology is there to help accuracy, but this is not what's at the heart of the problem. It's the culture. And when you say that's just a question of surveys or that you need improvement, it's kind of like you have your head in the sand. I hate to say things so frankly, but this is unacceptable what you're saying. I can understand what these questions and problems. In the action plan, we've committed to improving the situation, but certainly the technology will improve our position, and we will have the ability to direct the problem, and people who answer the calls will be able to understand the complexity. But we are doing better training for these people, and we're trying to give them the better tools. So I have taken the Auditor General's recommendations very seriously, and we're going to make changes at the agency to we give the best possible service to Canadians.
Mr. Chen, we're in the second round, as you know, and so it's a 5-minute round.
Thank you very much. I want to thank the Auditor General, and I want to thank the witnesses who are here before us today from the CRA. With all the changes that you are moving forward with at the CRA, have you set a new service standard? You mentioned before that your existing service standard is to have calls addressed 80% of the time within 2 minutes. Have you set a new service standard?
What we're doing now, rather than set a specific new service standard, we're doing two things. We're trying to increase transparency of what's going on. And I think I did mention, trying to provide a more comprehensive picture of not only how quickly we're answering when somebody gets through, but provide a picture of how many people are getting through. So we're focusing on that transparency. We took the first step in the departmental results report, and we hope to be improving very soon, as early as next month, our reporting on the website on that. So increased transparency is step one. We did have an experiment, if you like, to see if we changed the wait time, made it a bit longer, and let more people through. How would that play out in terms of customer satisfaction? And so far, it looks like we're getting some positive results. So we'll probably continue to have a little bit of flexibility on the wait time as we go forward. In terms of a new service standard, I think once we get the new technology and we are able to tell people up front what their wait times will be, we'll be operating the business in a slightly different way, and I think that may give rise to a different kind of a service standard. We'll see what that looks like. But at the moment, I think my focus is more on making sure that we're trying to do the best job we can, be as transparent as we can about telling Canadians what they can expect and what we're delivering. And then I think at the time of the new technology,
I'm going to stop you there because I only have so much time, Mr. Hamilton. I heard in your answer that essentially there is no set service standard in the way that you have said it before. You've talked about new technology, you've talked about transparency. To me, this is transparent enough. There's a report here that tells you very clearly what is going wrong. And quite frankly, to me, the most important thing you can do is to set a new service standard and then work towards achieving it. Because right now, that service standard only applies to the calls that gets through. And there are many calls that do not even get to an agent. The Auditor General points this out very clearly. Only 1/3 of calls reached an agent based on the information that's available here. You've talked about new technology, and from your departmental action plan, I can see that you have technology that will route the calls differently, that will allow calls to be callers to receive more information about their wait times. And quite frankly, I am a bit confused, because you also said earlier that you're not surprised by the auditor's report, that you don't wait around for the Auditor General to issue a report before you do anything. But in your action plan, you're only developing, quote, a new approach to training and evaluating agents in the first quarter of this fiscal year. Whereas you have had this information. You know what the lack of service is for the past 5 years. It's made very clearly in the Auditor General's report. Section 2.39, the Auditor General states very clearly, we also found that other assessors had encountered similar error rates over the past 5 years. So for 5 years, you've had information about callers not getting the right information, on average 30% of the time. You say you're not surprised and that you don't wait around for the Auditor General's report, yet you're only now starting to have, quote, a new approach to training. How does this make any sense?
I would say, just before I get to the training side, so we have, as I've mentioned, on the access, we've adjusted our system so that we can allow more people to get through, meaning that the people that get through might wait a bit longer. I would say that although the wait times have increased a little bit for those people that get through, we are seeing about 50% of people get through, which is, and I'm not saying that that's perfect or the end of the story, but it is better than the results that we would have seen during the time that the Auditor General looked at it. So that's on the access side. That's something that we're doing now in advance of the technology. Once the technology comes in, we'll be able to give people a sense of the wait times, and we may not get any busy signals, or very, very few. But that'll be a different world. We're taking action now. And on the training side, I mean, we have a training system. Every agent gets 6 weeks of training when they go through. It would be something that we look at on a continuous basis of, are we seeing any issues out there? Do we need to adjust it? We have made a significant change over the recent time that we're rolling out to have, as Frank mentioned, the gating process for how agents get through into being on the lines, and a nesting function whereby they work together to improve. So we are making improvements right now before the technology comes, but once the new technology arrives, and we didn't decide after the Auditor General's report to invest in new technology. That decision was taken. It's in train, and it will arrive next year. So yes, I mean, it's something that we have to improve on. I don't think I could be clearer with the committee or through our action plan that we need to improve, and we think we have a plan to improve.
Thank you very much. Mr. Nuttall, please.
Thank you. You know, Mr. Chair, there isn't very many occasions where you receive a very negative audit and the department comes in and the perception of the department goes down. But this is one of those. I feel like I'm sitting in an episode of Yes, Prime Minister, or Yes, Minister, for those who know what I'm talking about. And I feel like the overall attitude from CRA is kind of like laissez-faire, I don't care, you know, it just kind of is what it is. And I'll use this analogy to our friends at the CRA. You keep saying technology, okay? And it's like driving a car, crashing it, and saying, well, we just needed a new car. That is not what's needed. The driver needs to be better trained. There needs to be an entire new culture. Technology can drive efficiency. It can be a product. It can be core to a process. It is a sector of our economy. It is not a culture. This is a culture issue. If it wasn't a culture issue, we wouldn't have tables here in this report that the best of which on, I know these are showing how bad it is, but the best on these 4 tables is a 52% incorrect response. Couldn't even hit 50. Like, it's mind-boggling that we're now talking about technology. I don't want to hear about technology. We're going to hear enough technology with Phoenix. I want to hear what the culture change that's going to take place within this department, within the entire CRA. It is no secret that this is a bit of a rat's nest, and I want to understand what's going to change so that my constituents and the constituents from every member of parliament that sits in this place are not going to be coming to us complaining about all of the issues that we get complaints about all of the time. Our job is to ensure you're accountable to us, and what you've come today to try to show accountability, transparency is saying we're going to be transparent and we're going to get technology and we're going to institute training changes, and that is not good enough. I can't believe that we've had access to this report now for 2 weeks. I'm not sure how long, or publicly for 2 weeks. I'm not sure how long you've had access to this report, but this is not good enough. I don't even have a question because I just don't think you can answer any of them. It is that bad. I don't understand where this is going. I'm not even sure what we ask to come back to in a year, except to say, okay, is your incorrect response rate now at 50% instead of 84 on this one question? Is it now at 25 instead of 52? I'm not even sure where we go, because you know what's going to happen next year is you're going to say, well, we instituted the technology, but it takes about 6 months to 12 months for it to get through the system. We're going to be 3 years down the road, and we're still going to have these crappy results coming out of CRA, and it needs an entire culture change, not a new piece of technology. And that's all I have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nuttall. We'll now move to Ms. Shanahan, please. Oh, wait, yes. Ms. Shanahan, then Mr. Christopherson.
All right. Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you. And I'm afraid that I have to continue in the same line as my colleague, but I am more intrigued by how it did change, because like my colleague Mr. Lefebvre, I worked in banking and tax services over the last 25 years, and it was common practice for me to sit with my client and say, well, let's just call CRA and get to the root of this, reach an agent within a very short time, get some kind of an answer, and be able to move on. In fact, at the time, you know, being a Quebecer, I had the additional joy of actually calling Revenue Quebec, and at the time it was Revenue Quebec that had difficulty answering our questions in a timely manner, and yet about 10 years ago, I noticed that it flipped. We had more trouble getting through to CRA. Revenue Quebec improved immensely. So my question for the Auditor General is please to give us a bit of an historical perspective, because I'm sure this is not the first time that you've audited the CRA and its quality response times. Give us a bit of that as to, you know, maybe we can get some of the what were the root causes of this culture change, because I agree it must be incredibly frustrating for the employees, who I'm sure take great pride in their work, to even be giving an inaccurate response, sort of in a, well, let me just get rid of this call kind of way. You know, what has changed? Has it been the performance? And this is, I'll come to you, Mr. Hamilton, and your team. What are the performance indicators that are being used for employees? Has that changed over the years, where employees are now motivated in a different way when they're answering public calls? So the Auditor General first, please.
I believe the last time we looked at this issue was in 1991, so I'd have to go back into all of the details of that. In the audit that we presented here, we did provide 5 years of information about the ability of taxpayers to reach an agent, and in 2012-13 it was about 37%. Up to 2016-17 at 32%. So over the last 5 years, the ability, certainly the ability of people to reach an agent has been roughly the same place. Actually, during that time period, in the intervening 3 years, there were years when it was even worse. You know, in 2015-16, it was only 19%, and you know, then improved slightly in 2016-17. But overall, it has been, you know, in that 37% or less range for the last 5 years.
Thank you. Mr. Hamilton?
Yeah, maybe one thing I just want to say in response, Mr. Chair, if anybody at the table thinks that these results don't cause us concern at CRA and cause us to think, we know that we have to improve, I just want to correct that notion. And I refer to technology because it is going to be an improvement, but to use the driver analogy, we know that we need to train better. We know that we need to take a client-focused approach to this, both in our actions and in our reporting. So this is, while maybe not surprising in some sense, because we've seen some of the numbers before on the accessibility side, we know we need to take action. This is very serious for us, and we will be improving.
Sorry, can I just
so
jump
I just
in
want
there?
to say that first off.
At 2.28, the agency told us that callers would prefer a busy signal or an automated message to waiting a long time to speak with an agent. However, the agency had not surveyed callers to verify this assumption. So if we are going to client-based, are you talking to Canadians about what they're expecting from their CRA? Because it's an honor system. It works both ways.
Yeah, we do now have a survey at the end of the call that we're using to get feedback from Canadians. I would say on the issue of should we have longer wait times versus how many people get through the queue, that was looked at, I believe, in 2006 and 2012. So the agency did look at it to see if those were still the right choices and chose to stick with the 2-minute standard. So we are trying to do even more in the area of getting feedback from clients. And this is part of, you know, if you talk about culture change, and we see it in a few places in the agency where we are trying to change the culture to think about the client first, not what works for us, but what works for the client. And we will be using that to guide our decisions. And I can only say that I expect next year, if I come back in front of this committee, I hope to be able to say we are now reporting more transparently on what we've done. We are seeing some results of the better training that we have, hopefully implementing the new technology. We have better overall call measurement in terms of how many people get through, how long they wait. So that's going to be my accountability to this exercise.
Thank you, Ms. Shanahan. Mr. Christopherson.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to just pick up where Madame Shanahan was before I go to my main question. Again, the report shows us on page 16, 2.79, the agency's internal analysis found that on average, in 75% of the calls that were directed to the automated self-service system, the caller hung up before listening to the main menu. Further, there was a further 20% that showed that 69% of the callers who reached the system called back repeatedly because they wanted to get an agent. So again, you sent people to the self-service system. 75% of the people hung up, and yet you tell us that you've been listening to what Canadians want. There's a major disconnect there in terms of what you think Canadians want and what Canadians actually want. And at some point, you got to get past this artificiality of picking these things out of I don't know where and start asking Canadians. Because if you were asking Canadians, you would not have a system where 75% of the people don't like what you're doing in terms of how you're providing that information. I mean, it just screams you're not listening. I want to go to something, though, that really concerns me. I'm going to come back to this business of the National Quality and Accuracy Learning Program and the fact that on page 14, 2.67, I want to tell you, one of the biggest sins that a minister can commit is to mislead the House. That is a firing offense. Now, I'm looking at 2.67, and it says, quote, overall, we found that the Canada Revenue Agency's public reporting overstated its call center's results. In fact, in your departmental results report of 2016-2017, you bragged about a success rate of between 87 and 90%, and that's wrong. So my first question, I'd like a quick answer to this, in your next report, are you going to acknowledge that you had wrong information in the previous year's report?
What I will say about the next report is that we will provide a more comprehensive
No,
view.
that's not what I asked you, sir. I asked you if you're going to acknowledge that you gave Canadians the wrong information. Are you going to put that in that report, yes or no?
I don't believe that we would say we provided wrong information. I believe that we would say we provided some information and we didn't provide other. And so what we're actually going to do, we're not going to wait for next year's report. We're going to start reporting transparently on the overall call center picture, because some of our measures have not been reflective of what Canadians want to hear. So we are taking action, and I think by implication saying that the reporting that we are doing is not complete and we need to provide a better report.
I mean, when in what you're going to do about things, you went on to say in your report you're going to expand the information. That's nice. What I'd like to see is that you commit to making it accurate. This is a big deal. That's why I started by saying when a minister stands up in the House of Commons and misleads the House, they get fired. This agency misled Canadians, and I'm not hearing a good enough mea culpa and what you're going to do about it.
Well, I think what you're hearing is that we don't think it's adequate, what we provided, and we are going to provide more information, better information.
Well, will you say that much at least, that the information from the previous year was accurate? Don't just tell me you're going to give more information. That's pretty useless in a world of overloaded information.
Well, I think, one thing that I would just say, more information can be better typically. And if we could typically report on, we answered 80%, we answered calls within 2 minutes 80% of the time. That doesn't say anything about how many people didn't get through. So I would call that inadequate information. It's not misleading, it's not inaccurate, but it doesn't tell part of the story that will be of interest to Canadians. Well, it is inaccurate to say
your error rate is 6% and it's actually 30. You don't think that that's misleading? You don't think that's inaccurate?
Well, that's we're talking about public reporting here. I just want to finish on that one to say that with the information that we provide could be accurate, but it also could be better if we provided more. And I think in the area of the call centers, that's one of the things that we're trying to do. We are doing, and we're going to do better, which is to provide a more complete picture that talks about not only if you get through, how long will you wait, but talks about the people that don't get through. And I think that's what's going to make it more meaningful for people.
Thank you very much. Expect to come back early, because there's still a whole host of questions here.
Thank you very much. I think we are looking at the calendar for May, June, so that may not be enough time to do a lot of evaluation, but we'll be looking at calendars for callbacks, I'm sure. Monsieur Massé, vous avez 5 minutes.
5 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Sorsen. Bravo for your good French. I'm always very impressed. Mr. Hamilton, thank you very much for being here today. This report is obviously a difficult one for us. Remind me of the number of employees that you have at the agency. Roughly. At the agency, we have 2,000 employees during our normal season, but we've increased this number to roughly 3,000 people. Between 2,000 and 3,000, depending on the season. So for the 9 call centers, yes. Okay. And in total, what percentage of these employees were aware of the AG's report and have read it? I'm not sure about this number. I think almost everyone is aware of this report. I sent a message to all employees. I told them about the report and the response and the need to improve the situation. And I told them we had to work together
to give better results for Canadians. I think that is a very good thing to do. Obviously, public servants work very hard to make sure that they meet their objectives, and there are obviously serious challenges, and we have to share the efforts that are being done. And if you can make sure they're aware of this report, sometimes we just have to look at awareness to improve things. Mr. Ferguson, are we able to know how many call centers and how many employees and public servants work in call centers at the Canadian government? Overall, yes. All call centers for the government? No, I do not have this type of information now. Our audit was simply on the CRA's call centers. Okay. The reason I'm asking this, and this is an important question because I get the feeling that there are many call centers at the Canadian government, for the Canadian government, and that there are many public servants who work in call centers throughout Canada. And what I'd like to know is that how does the CRA work with its peers in the other departments, with your deputy ministers, to see if there are any opportunities that you could benefit from other call centers. You could learn from their experience. All too often, we work in silos in our departments for various reasons. And when there's a report like this one, people react and we say, yes, we need technology. We also need more resources to be able to meet needs. Rather than having a better idea of the overall picture and finding out what other departments do and with their call centers. And I'm thinking right now about 1800. The 1-800 numbers. So this is a good opportunity for you to learn from the lessons of other call centers. So have you done so? And if not, will you? Yes, Mr. Chair. This is a very important question for us. We do have to work together with other departments and other agencies such as Service Canada. And you mentioned new technology. This is for the government overall. It's not just important for our agency, but also for Service Canada and others. So we work together to implement this new technology, but also to share best practices and to share our experiences and challenges. So yes, this is important. It's different for the agency, the CRA, because sometimes our challenges are more complicated. It's not just a question of sending simple information out. There are many things we do have in common between the various agencies and departments, and we do work together with other deputy ministers as well and other people in other departments. I appreciate this because it's this type of answer that we hear. All departments say, oh, we have very specific particular challenges, and it's hard for us to work efficiently with other departments. But I'm happy to hear you say that with the questions that have been asked by Canadian citizens and taxpayers, some of the questions that are asked can be answered by agents who have received training and who have perhaps benefited from the experiences of other departments. Do you have any examples, more specific examples, of ways you've tried to optimize and improve things that could allow when you have cooperated with other departments, aside from examples you've already mentioned? I'll ask my colleague to give you some better examples, but the example of a new system, it was important during my time here over the past year, but I think there are some other examples in the past where we've worked with other departments or agencies to share best practices, as I've said. Do you have any other examples?
Go ahead, sir.
Oui, peut-être je pourrais ajouter qu'on en a un champ.
I also want to add we have exchange of information regarding the quality of our answers. We work on these issues together. We also work with the private sector as well, and this is another way that we can find new and better ways of working together. For example, we talk with Tangerine, and they offer good service. And we also talk about best practices with them.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Justement.
Mr. Chair, during your introduction earlier, you said something that I think my other colleagues here would agree with you at the House of Commons. We receive a lot of calls from citizens who are shocked by this situation. And these Canadians, they're not billionaires. They can't afford an accountant for their tax returns. These are people with modest incomes. And obviously, often the calls I receive in my writing come from elderly citizens. And 1 out of 10 times, they don't get the right information. And sometimes they even get the wrong information. So I have to ask a question. Did they pay too much tax, or do they not pay enough tax? That's the first question that comes to mind. And when they get inaccurate information, does that mean they've paid too much tax? Mr. Hamilton, what would you say to these people? I don't really understand your question. For these people, I would tell them it's important to get the best possible information and information that is accurate. It's an interesting question to see whether they're paying too much or not enough tax. But for me, it's important to give them the best possible information that is available and that reflects the law. And that is why we're going to do a lot of things to improve things. We're going to train people and to make sure that the right person gives the right answer at the right time to these people. And notably for vulnerable people, you're right. It's important to have a good website with the right information on it. But many people like to be able to talk to a real person, an agent, on the phone. So we have to give them the right service. It's important for us, and we're going to do a better job. Very interesting what you're saying, Mr. Hamilton, but that doesn't answer my question. I'll go back. We've received calls in our writing offices from people who are saying that I filled out my tax return with the information that the CRA gave me. So then we've learned that this information was not quite accurate, to say the least. So these people fill out their tax return with incorrect information, and perhaps they've paid too much tax. What redress do these people have because of the inaccurate information that the CRA gave them? What redress do they have because they've paid too much tax? I'm sorry, I did not understand your question correctly. We do have a taxpayer relief system. They can contact the agency and they can say, yes, I've paid too much tax because of an error that the CRA committed. So we do hear these complaints, and we are able to cancel interest if it's appropriate. So we do have a system in place of for taxpayer relief, and people can contact the agency and talk with us. Mr. Hamilton, with all due respect, people are somewhat suspicious and doubtful. When you get the wrong information, when you do your tax return, what guarantee can you give these people who have already been fooled once that they won't be fooled again when they go back and when you review things? The most important thing for me, and of course the taxpayer relief system is important, but the most important thing for me is not to give the incorrect information to people. And that is why we're going to improve things to make sure that the information we give is accurate and appropriate. I think that the CRA has much integrity, and people should have confidence in the CRA.
it is important to make sure that we do give the best possible information to people, for Canadians. It is a big responsibility for the CRA. It's a very important one, and we're going to improve things to make sure this doesn't happen. Thank you.
Hamilton, you had a little more time left, Mr. Deltel. Maybe I'll just ask one real quick question. How is morale at CRA? How is morale amongst employees? I mean, with an audit like this coming down, is morale high?
Yes, Mr. Chair, it's an interesting question, and I'm pleased to say that the morale in this area is high. And I'll just give you again, refer to the example last year on the appeals audit, which again was difficult for us because it pointed to a number of shortcomings in our appeals process in terms of how we were timeliness, that we weren't giving information in a way that taxpayers expected. When I talked to the appeals people afterwards, they were actually somewhat energized because to go back, people there understand some of the problems in the system, and when we have a motivated action plan to correct it, they get energized by it. And so I did ask the question. I sent out the message as indicated to tell people about the report and the importance for us and the importance of improving. And I asked the representatives from the call centers, how are people feeling? And they said, actually, good. They're feeling like this is an opportunity for us to really improve, to make sure that we're giving them the right tools. We have the technology on the horizon, but there will be an importance, a priority attached to this by virtue of what I'm doing, by virtue of what Frank and Gillian are doing, and people are seizing that opportunity. Now, we have to deliver on that, and I know that will be an issue for the committee and for the Auditor General. Are we going to commit to improve the way that we've laid out in our action plan? And I believe that we will, and our employees will be expecting and putting our feet to the fire. But for the moment, I can say, yes, they're feeling motivated to make improvements to the system.
Thank you. Ms. Mendez.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you all for being here. I'm going to follow up on my colleagues, both Mr. Christopherson and Mr. Deltel's points about the fact that taxpayers are citizens. Taxpayers expect a government that provides services to them that are accurate, that are timely. When someone calls one of the call centers to ask tax information and is given an erroneous answer, that will most automatically cause, in good faith, a mistaken return. Okay, he or she is going to make a return that is mistaken because of the information he or she received. Now, Mr. Deltel asked what recourse they have, and almost automatically the agency actually does the calculations and eventually will give us a proper amount. Except when we owe money to the agency, we're charged interest. When the agency owes money to us, not one red cent is paid in interest. And I mean, for some people, this is a big issue. It's a lot of money. And they did it in good faith. They actually produced their returns in good faith. Why are we continuing to provide bad information to people? If somebody doesn't know the answer, tell the citizen that they don't know the answer and refer them to somebody who can answer them. But giving erroneous information is extremely harmful. And I really can't understand how we, for years, and this is not recent, this is not one time, this has been going on for a while, how we can continue to sustain a service that is providing erroneous information to citizens.
Yeah, I'll ask my colleague to talk a little bit more about what we do in the cases where taxpayers get erroneous information and how I've talked about the taxpayer relief program, but he'll elaborate on that. But you're absolutely right. I mean, one of the things that I want to emphasize for our agents is to say we understand that the tax system is complicated, and you might not know the answer to every question, depending on what tier of agent you are. If you're the first tier and you get a very detailed question about RRSPs or what have you, the right thing to do is to say, I don't know, and I'll refer you to somebody who does. And it is not right to try to guess.
If I may interrupt you 2 seconds, Mr. Hamilton, I saw the numbers on the child benefit program, and 21% of erroneous answers were given in the first year of implementation of the program. It's very high in a program that should be reasonably easy to explain to citizens. How do you explain that?
I'd have to look in more detail at those numbers, and I'm happy to do that and come back to you. But I think the important point, which I'm agreeing with you on, is our agents need to know, if they don't know the answer, find somebody who does and get the right information out there. So I totally agree with you, but maybe I'll just ask Frank to comment a little bit more on.
Yeah, thanks for that. Well, maybe I could just add a couple of things. I think it's important, you talked about the child benefit, for example, that as well as opportunities for relief if there's a problem, also important to know that the child benefit, for example, is retroactive 10 years. So you can imagine a situation where, pardon me?
The child benefit is retroactive 10 years.
It's about two different plans. She's talking about the new program, and you're talking about the child tax benefit.
What I mean by that is, imagine a situation where an individual doesn't apply for the Canada Child Benefit and later finds out they should have applied. Just giving you an example. They then apply, but later they would be paid retroactive for any amounts that were owing. And why I say retroactive 10 years, I'm talking about 5 years from now, if they come and apply, and they should have applied way back, they're going to get paid retroactive for that full amount. So that's what I mean by retroactive for up to 10 years. So just to say that there are measures in place where we...
I'm sure you have heard the stories of women, particularly women, who have been trying to prove that they are the mothers of 1 or 2 children. And we're even asking them to get their ex-husbands to sign off on this. Excuse me, that just doesn't work. You're a mother. You've had the children, you know, why are you asking all these very honest questions of citizens?
Absolutely, there's some very difficult cases here and people in very difficult situations and where their situations change. And I will say there are procedures, and at first instance you're gonna try to verify the information. And I do believe our call centers and our people are very responsive, that they do try to find alternative answers. And when they do, the child benefit is retroactive to the day where they should have got that. I can say the same thing in terms of adjustments to taxes. Just to say again, there's a lot of people, 1.9 million people a year, that go and resubmit their taxes because they forgot something. And, you know, absolutely it could be because they got an incorrect answer from a call agent, but more likely it's because they forgot something themselves. Again, we go back and we make those adjustments, and as a result, you know, we end up with tax returns that are very accurate.
Thank you very much. We'll now move to Mr. Nuttall and then Mr. Christofferson, and that's it for today.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, there were some questions by Mr. Christofferson, and I just want to follow up because it needs to be talked about. So 2.68, according to the agency, about 90% of callers are connected to either the automated self-service system or a call center agent. By blocking and redirecting its calls, the agency was able to report that it met its targets for all telephone lines. However, when blocked calls are factored in, the agency's overall success rate was 36%. Those are the Auditor General's words. Was there a paragraph within the reporting from CRA that said callers are connected 90% of the time?
I'm not sure I'm not sure I'm understanding your question.
Well, my question is the questioning from Mr. Christofferson was along the lines of accurate reporting, which was also outlined by the Auditor General. So it is misinformation when we customize the amount of information that we're going to put out there to make it seem like one thing when it's actually another. So if the real number is a 36% success rate, but the reported number is 90%, and we change the criteria a little bit here and there to try to make it look good when it's not, on the best day of the year I'm having, being the kindest person I am, I have to call that misinformation. The rest of them, I'd probably call it something else, but it's not appropriate for this committee. How is that the case? That's even, in fact, this is even worse than the wrong answers to members of the public, because it goes from the stage from mistakes made on the phone line to crafted political messaging to show that we're something that we're not.
Yeah, and Mr. Chair, what I would say is I'd like to improve that information that we're giving and to make it more accurate and more comprehensive.
It's 36 and 90%, Mr. Hamilton. It's 36 versus 90%. And this is not a thing that is about improving. This is somebody determined that they were going to include something and not include something else to make something look really, really good. And I'm not sure what the structure of those who make these decisions in terms of their pay structure is. Are they bonused on these things? Is it part of an annual review? But somebody somewhere crafted this to be able to go out and say, pat myself on the back, 90%. Meanwhile, as soon as we open that door, it's actually 36.
And I think, Mr. Chair, this goes back to my earlier point. One can construct different measures of how you're doing. And, again, the 80% in 2 minutes is one. What I prefer and my commitment is to make sure that we're presenting the total picture. And we can talk, I'll let Frank speak a little bit about the potential, I think, 87 or 90%, which can be a caller accessible.
There is only one perspective that matters here, and that is for the perspective of the person that we're serving. And those are those people that are calling in. Those are those callers. From the caller's perspective, it's a 36% rate. From your department's perspective, it's a 90% rate. That is a huge variance. That actually is the best example of the culture issues that are so obviously existing. I don't think there's a member around this table right now who's going, yeah, we don't really have culture issues. We need a little bit more transparency, and we need, maybe we need to train some people better and get some better technology, and CRA is off to the races. I don't think that is a thing that's the message that I'm hearing, and I don't think that that's a thing that exists around this table. I think you need to go back. I want to know who came up with the system to say that over half of the callers aren't actually callers. I want to know who came out with these results, because it just doesn't make sense.
So we have about a 20-second answer coming.
And I think that I will be able to satisfy what you want. I think in the new world that we're embarking into, we will give a comprehensive picture. We will know how many people got through, how many people didn't get through, how long did people wait on the phone, and by giving that complete picture, and I think transparency does change culture, because we will know, we will be accountable for everything that's happening, whether it's good, whether it's not so good, and we will know, Canadians will know, and you will get the statistics that you need, and I hope to be starting to provide those on the website as early as next month on a monthly basis. And so we will be reporting to Canadians in a way that I think makes sense, and whether it looks good for the agency or bad for the agency, we will report those.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hamilton. Mr. Christofferson, you're going to have final say today. Mr. Christofferson.
Thanks, Chair. Just to close off that accuracy issue, we've had this in the past with these departmental results reports, and we may need to go back to every now and then just randomly pulling one and holding a hearing on it, because we found in the past, and there was some corrective measures, but putting stuff like that, I mean, the argument is just being made by Mr. Nantel. That is exactly what is unacceptable in terms of talking to Canadians. And this looks like it was contrived. I agree, and that's why it upset me so much. But I'm also hoping that, because one of the reasons we televise this is not just so the Canadians can hear, but the rest of government can hear. And I'm hoping that there are departments and deputies that are understanding, monkeying around with these departmental results reports to play with the numbers to make it look good is eventually going to come back to haunt you. We will find you. I want to, if I can, Chair, though, I want to return to this. It's nagging at me, the National Quality and Accuracy Learning Program. Like this whole thing, and my comments are going to be, questions are going to go to Mr. Ferguson. For instance, one of the methods that they use, and I'm talking about the agency, this entity itself, it looks pretty Mickey Mouse to me. Like it's supposed to be a professional entity that gives a reflection of what's going on, and the certified listener thing where you actually sit down beside them and monitor it, well, of course people are going to modify their behavior if your examiner is sitting right beside you. And that's what I'm worried about, is the shallowness of the thinking of this. Another method was to have agents make anonymous calls to other agents and ask non-account specific, and then agents said in these cases they often recognize the caller's voice since it was one of their colleagues, and in many cases the telephone system identified that the call was coming from a testing line. Like, help me understand what is going on in this Mickey Mouse outfit, Mr. Ferguson. Really, is there any wonder we've got a lot of these problems when this is the training methods? So, Mr. Ferguson, maybe you can give a more calm reflection of this than I have done.
Certainly, you know, the issue that we were raising was exactly, I guess, as described, that if there is somebody, if somebody knows that their response is being monitored, then they will modify their behavior. So, for example, they would be more likely to go to look up the answer in the computer system than try and just answer it off the cuff. And in fact, I think our auditors will tell you that in the course of our calls, which were anonymous, that there would have been a correlation between the people that took their time and that you could tell were trying to look it up versus the agents that were giving an answer more quickly. So I think that's the type of behavior change that will happen if an agent knows that they are being monitored.
Yeah, but you know what? I don't think you need a PhD in anything to get that. And that's what struck me, was the level of common sense seemed to be missing. Anyway, last thing I touched on this earlier, I want to come back to it again, is this Office of the Taxpayer Ombudsman. And it's related to the extent that it's $2.3 million of taxpayers' money spent through this department. And again, I want to remind colleagues, this is the outfit, this is the report that said, our role is not to be an advocate for taxpayers, and like 3 paragraphs later, we serve taxpayers. Give me a break. In this report, this $2.3 million a year for this ombudsman. By the way, not an agent of Parliament. This is an ombudsman attached to the minister. I'm not even sure they should be allowed to call themselves ombudsman in light of that. However, our office, quote, our office has received numerous complaints from taxpayers and representatives in recent years claiming it's very difficult to connect with the CRA's general inquiries telephone lines, you think? Recurring complaint from taxpayers as they reach a busy signal, regardless of the time regardless of the time of day they call, forcing them to make multiple calls. Given the announcement of increased funding for telephone access and initiatives underway by CRA, our office is not opening an examination at this time, but we are monitoring this issue. What I'd like is just a very quick response from the Auditor General in terms of value for money from this Ombudsman's office. The biggest issue was the ability to get through. They found that there was a problem, and once the minister said, I'm putting money on it, they shut down. What value are we getting for our $2.3 million here, Auditor General?
Mr. Ferguson?
Well, I think, Mr. Chair, obviously I can't answer the question from that point of view. You know, we haven't gone in and done the analysis, but I think it's very evident that this issue about access and accuracy is an extremely important issue that You know, I think the agency has said that they are going to try to fix it. But, you know, I think as a lot of the questioning today has been, you know, really this issue needed to have been dealt with earlier than it has been.
Thank you. Mr. Hamilton, you had a very quick, it's got to be like 20 seconds.
Just 20 seconds, because we referred to the departmental results report a few times, and I'm not saying we can't do better, we can, but I just want to say that if I look at the report, we do report for individual and business lines in a way that is not dissimilar to what the Auditor General's results are in terms of the number of calls that were answered by an agent, how many went through to self-service, how many received a business signal. And so this is, I believe, the start of us giving the complete picture that people need to have so that we can understand the problems from our perspective and that Canadians can give us the feedback that we need to get to improve the system. So I just wanted to say in there, what we report is not dissimilar to the results that the Auditor General had. There's a couple of minor differences, but we are trying to be more transparent.
Thank you very much, and thank you for appearing here today. I guess just to finish off, you know, to reiterate what I said earlier about the number of calls coming in, I guess we have back in the rural Alberta, we have I don't know if it's even politically appropriate to call it what we call it, but you know, when you try to find the light at the end of the tunnel, kind of on the farm, they say, you know, you try to make a silk purse out of a pig's ear. Okay, that's a bad, maybe I shouldn't bring it up in Parliament, but it's to make something pretty out of something that's ugly. And I guess that's kind of what I want to try to do. I thank you for being here. I would say this, that with all the constituency work that we do, I do appreciate the liaisons that the CRA has with members of Parliament's offices. I will tell you that from what my staff tells me, that way, people call our office because they are so frustrated. They're at the end of their rope with CRA. And our staff has the ability to connect with someone in CRA and typically get, I would hope, right answers, but answers. And so thank you for that. And if we can bring that level back to the general public, who really, that's who from all parties we want to help and support, we can only do it with your help. It's like the people at the border crossings coming back from the States. When they meet a Canadian border crossing agent, and that border crossing agent is friendly and welcoming, you know what? It's appreciated. When people come back into Canada and it's like they're meeting you know, someone who's upset and mad right off the beginning, I hear about it. Our offices hear about it. Who do you have representing you at that border? And it's very same with CRA. Who do you have representing them on the phone? They are the face of CRA. It's not Mr. Hamilton. It's not Mr. Vermeten. It's the person on the phone. And that's why many of our constituents get frustrated. And so you can expect a call back. I'll pretty well guarantee you, without even going to committee business, there will be a call back, and hopefully in the interim we will see some good progress. So thank you very much. We're going to ask you all to take leave as quickly as possible. We have some committee business the last 10 minutes. It is in camera, it is in confidence, and so thank you. We will suspend.